For Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerd Steve, and today I am joined by Sean Merwin. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing just peachy. How are you?
Good, man. Fellow East Coaster.
Yeah. I flash gang signs, but I don't know how.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, we're getting older too, so like the arthritis is
Right.
kicking
The
in,
arthritis.
and
The arthritis. I'm constantly doing a gang sign that's called arthritis.
yeah, it'll just like mean something completely different.
Right.
So, are you able to stay busy while you're locked in?
I am not only locked in and busy, but I am busier than I usually am being locked in. As we were talking beforehand, I've been working from home, at real jobs and at freelance jobs for 25 years. I've taught from home. I've been a project manager for a software company from home. So this is, I've moved my desk like a third of an inch, and that's the extent of the changes here.
Yeah, yeah. I think we were kind of both talking, and it's like the biggest change is now other people are home as well.
Right.
Um, so, are you getting gaming in during the apocalypse?
I am. We've tried to play more board games and role playing games as a family. And I have the group that I would normally meet with up in Buffalo, New York. We've gone online and we're playing twice a week for only for a couple of hours a week. But we do Monday nights and Friday nights just to get our minds out of whatever is going on in the world. The guys I play with all have two kids that are basically under five, and they're all locked in. So they are in bad need of escape, and gaming has been filling that niche for them. And I just like, role playing and being silly. So,
Wow, yeah, but twice a week would is kind of a lot for in-person games.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I know they're online now, but I'm just this is your in-person group. So was your group used to gaming online, or is this all new to them?
It's completely new. We would meet maybe once every other week or so, get together on Friday night, play for 4 hours, typical sort of schedule. And as soon as all this started, these guys were like, within 2 weeks, they were going, please, I need games. Let's find a way to do it. So the guy who was DMing said, yeah, okay, let's move it online. And so we started playing Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus online.
Oh, you
And
even get to
we're
be a player. You're not even the
I even
GM.
get to, yeah, and the scary part is I wrote part of that book, and but they don't know the part I wrote, so I'm not going to tell the DM which part I wrote and which I didn't, and just let him do his thing so he doesn't worry about running it differently or
Yeah.
doing something wrong. We're actually past the part that I've written, and he did a great job. So it was a lot of fun to kind of see it from that side, see all the things I wish I had done differently, or if I had done that, it would have been perfect. But seeing it as a player, it's kind of a design tip, right? Is when you're designing something, play through it in your mind as if you were the player. What would you think is cool? If you can do that, then that's one more pass on your design document that you can make to make it better.
Okay. So you've worked on that. What other things have you worked on for Wizards of the Coast? Or what? Go with like, the big name item tickets, because I know you've worked on a lot over the years.
Mhm. Yeah, well, let's see. The biggest thing I worked on recently, other than Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, is the Acquisitions Incorporated book. So that was a project that started a long, long time ago. Uh, I was asked by Wizards to write some short adventures that would run at PAX. And so they gave me an outline, and I was supposed to use some of the Acquisitions Incorporated characters with approval from Penny Arcade to do these little short adventures. So I did that, handed it off to Wizards, wiped my hands of the thing, and Teos Abadia had also worked on an adventure called Cloud Giant's Bargain that they gave away free at the theaters where they were streaming the Acquisitions Incorporated live show. And he was there at the PAX where this played, and he talked to Jerry Holkins, and Jerry was just very excited about both of those projects. And Teo said, well, why don't we do something bigger? And Jerry said, yeah, let's do that. And, life goes on, and days and weeks and months and years pass. And in fits and starts, slowly, Teos and I started working on some of the adventure and some of the crunch for it. And Scott Fitzgerald Gray came in as an editor, and Alyssa Grant, who works at Penny Arcade as a producer. Then she started taking over. Jerry and his team added some bits, and slowly it came together. And almost at the end of the project, well, it was past when we had turned stuff over, Wizards of the Coast heard what was going on, and they said, do you mind if we take a look at it? And Jerry and Alyssa said, well, yeah, here's what we're going to do. And Wizards of the Coast said, how about we publish it? And, everyone just went crazy, because that's what you want. You want the official company, the owner of the IP, the owner of the game, to publish it. And that's what happened. So, we were excited. We were terrified, because Teos and I had done a lot of work for Wizards over the years. So we knew what would fly at Wizards and what wouldn't. And some of the Acquisitions Incorporated stuff is a little bit out there. And so, we're sitting here going, oh gosh, we would have never written that. We're just picturing like Chris Perkins or someone else there, Jeremy Crawford, looking at this going, what were these guys thinking? And I'm like, don't think that. We weren't thinking about publishing it through Wizards. We were thinking about publishing it on our own. So, but a lot of the cool stuff that we thought, well, they might like, got through. So, we were happy with the final outcome.
Oh yeah, these are like, oh, it's on the butcher's block now.
Yeah.
But
It's like, well, they'll never hire us again when they see, what some of the shenanigans we were up to. But it went over fine, and it went over in the spirit that it was intended, right? Sort of a dark capitalist satire mixed in with some just knock the door down and kill some monsters D&D.
So you write for a lot of different companies, and that's something I didn't even really consider. So, like, I imagine as you work with these different companies, you get to kind of know what those companies are about and what they want. Is that difficult to keep all that straight in your head?
It is, and it's even difficult to keep it straight within Wizards, because if you're writing for the Adventurers League, there's sort of a way to do things, whereas if you're writing for the company itself, there's sort of a way to do things. And if you're writing for, say, a convention game that's not Adventurers League, there's a way to do things. So sometimes even within the same company, it's hard. But yes, then when you step outside of that, the lessons that you learn at one company might not translate to the other. When I was working on the Star Trek Adventures book from Modiphius, that was, now I'm in Star Trek land. So how does a Star Trek story, if you turn it into an adventure, differ from a D&D story? And making that transition was kind of tough, because at first you sit down and you're writing and you're like, and then they run in with their phasers and they blast the monster. I'm like, wait a second, that's not Star Trek. I gotta totally rethink this. What makes a good Star Trek adventure? What makes a good Star Trek story? So, it's the juggling of even that can take a toll. It's just 2 or 3 more drafts that you have to do, right? It's just like, get myself out of that rut and put myself in a new mindset.
Is there a struggle to not write in red shirts?
Well, I mean, I just assume the characters are the red shirts.
And then, there you go.
And then,
so Dave has a question for you. AL Eberron allows for DMs to publish their adventures on the DMs Guild as AL legal mods without prior approval, writing to a template. Can you talk about this process?
I can talk about what we did. And so what we did was we wanted DMs to be able to create, but the current process for Adventurers League for them creating content is called the CCC, the Convention Created Content Program. And while that is wonderful, I see what it does to the Adventurers League Forgotten Realms team. They just have hundreds of adventures to go through and have to keep straight. And it just turns into a logistical nightmare. So what we decided to do for the Eberron campaign was set up these guidelines and just make it clear. This is the top level of what you at least have to do. and you can't go above that. You can't give away more than this. And we sort of make it so it's important, but it doesn't necessarily unbalance the full campaign. And so if you can stay within that, then we want the DMs to be as creative as they want. We want them to do all the things that their players want, and it gives them the flexibility to do that without overburdening the team or the actual campaign itself. So, Dave, thank you for the question. I hope people are enjoying that process. Since the Oracle of War campaign is a once a month release campaign, we knew that some people who want to play every week, every day, however much they play, they would need more content. And that was a streamlined way to give DMs the ability to either create or purchase that content on the DMs Guild.
Zareth also has a question. I'm going to run a criminal campaign into Descent. Any tips? Any advice on Acquisitions Inc. book campaign starting your own adventures guide? That is 2 questions, Zareth. But
yeah. So what was the first question?
Running a criminal campaign in Descent. Any tips?
Okay. Okay. Wow. A criminal campaign in Descent into Avernus. I think that you can make it work in any way. And in fact, given the dark and diabolical nature of what you can do with Acquisitions Incorporated, I think it's a good and actually funny fit. With the Descent into Avernus book, you start in Baldur's Gate and you do some investigating and you solve some mysteries. Once you get into Avernus, it's very much a I don't want to say capitalist, but it's a business sort of deal, right? You're dealing with all of these problems, and most of the people there aren't trying to kill you. They're trying to get something from you. And in the sense that commerce is just who has the power and what do you have to trade to take that power from them, it works beautifully. I mean, you can create an Acquisitions Incorporated branch in Avernus, no problem, because it's all ruled by law. It's all ruled by contract. And what's more Acquisitions Incorporated than, filling out forms in triplicate and double checking the language to make sure you are the screwer instead of the screwee in certain terms of the business deal that you just made. So I think that's great. There are so many different power groups in there. There's warlords. There's 2 demon or archdevils that don't like each other. And as soon as you have that sort of thing where you can go back and forth, you can open up a branch working for one of the devils against another devil and use basically the same rules.
So clearly you're working on things other than D&D, because you mentioned Star Trek as well. Any other properties you're working on that are non-D&D games?
Not at the moment. The 2 big ones I worked on were the Star Trek Adventures book, and then there was an organized play campaign that went along with it, where you could play about once a month. An adventure would release. You could play in the TOS, right, the original series world, or you could play in the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager world. That sort of, I ran out of time to continue working on that. I also worked on the Dracula dossier book for Night's Black Agents, which was a lot of fun, a great world, and Gumshoe was a great rule set. I do work with a company called Encoded Designs. We call ourselves a gaming hippie commune, where we all come from sort of different areas, different games, different skills. And so, somebody will work on a Fate book, so I'll do the editing on that. And then when I have a D&D book, I'll give it to them and they'll do the editing and layout. And so we always have new projects coming for that. So keep an eye on encodeddesigns.com for stuff that will be coming out, in the near future. Different sort of indie games, as well as D&D or Fate or other more prominent games. Other than that, I'm not working on anything outside of D&D at the moment, that I can remember right now.
Okay, nice. So is it like a nice palate cleanser when you kind of like get to branch out into other games and other genres, to take a break from D&D?
It is. It's very important to do, not just to cleanse the palate, to take your mind off of what you have been focused on solely for so long, but it also refuels that tank, right? It it reinvigorates you and gives you ideas that you can take from one place to another. So anything that takes you out of the, like, maybe the D&D adventure mindset is helpful. It, even playing a board game or watching a movie, or just talking with somebody. Hey, I'll find somebody on the internet who is really in-depth knowledge of the cipher system, right? And I'll say, hey, teach me this, just so I can see something different if I don't have this time to sit down and read the book myself. And just chatting with someone about the intricacies of something that they are so steeped in, that I will never be as smart as they are about that, but I'm learning from them. All of that is super important.
So Dave has a couple more questions for you. Ever consider recording podcasts on live stream with chat enabled? Because you're also a podcaster.
True. Yes, I do have a podcast called Down with D&D on the Misdirected Mark Network, where once a week I will bring a co-host on who is a creator in the industry, and just talk to them about something gaming, D&D related. Have I thought about it? We tried it a couple of times, and we didn't have the scheduling capacity at the time to say, okay, we're always going to sit down at this time in this format to do this. So it's not something that definitely wouldn't happen. But right now, when you're scheduling other people and they're very busy, sometimes it's hard to say, we need you to be here exactly at this time. I'd rather say, well, oh, you need to record at midnight, no problem, I'll do it. And then, have an editor go through it and, make sure it's clean, and put it out that way.
That actually to me sounds like maybe a Patreon reward, really, where you guys are like, hey, what, even if it's like, the day before or 30 minutes before, we're gonna do the thing. If you want to, if you want to listen to us now, you can. And it's private just for them, and then it gives you the ability to go back and edit it and then put it out the way you guys want to put it out. But the patrons can have kind of have the raw and ugly if they want it, and kind of more interactive.
Yeah, if I was the technology person, I would consider it. But right now, I'm just sort of, my job is to find the person, talk to them, and then hand it off. And I don't have the bandwidth to, make the nice screen and make sure everything looks good. And so I do have a face made for radio as well. So that's another reason why you can hear my dulcet tones without having to get the whole package here.
I feel you so hard there.
Mm-hmm.
Dave is also says your articles on D&D Beyond about writing adventures are a gem. Any chance we'll get a printed book? Can you cover the high points of those articles?
Oh man, thank you, Dave, and for bringing that up. So what Dave's talking about, on the DM's Guild, I did a series of articles on adventure design. It is called aptly Let's Design an Adventure. And I get so many questions. How do I write an adventure? How do I get started? How do I do this? So what I decided to do is just write this blog series. And so it takes you step by step through. When I'm writing an adventure, this is generally how I do it. I start with thinking about the overall story, then I create an outline, then I break it down by encounter, and then I think about each encounter and what each encounter means. So if I was just to give sort of one or two high level tips from that, blog series, it's think about encounters as discrete things that have a purpose and different outcomes. You can let the players handle those encounters in whatever way you want. They could be combat, it could be role playing, it could be exploration. But you need to think about it as if you're creating your own thing, its own separate, discrete thing. Then after you create it, you need to put it together with the other ones you've created, sort of like cogs, in a machine and gears. And then you have to do a revision to make sure all of those pieces fit together. But if you can create encounters that are fun, that DMs like to run, that players love to be in, and that fit your overall narrative, then you are creating the best way possible, the best parts to make this overall machine. And so many people I've seen who are getting into adventure design forget that they have to make these encounters, and they just end up sort of writing a short story that the characters go through, and they might make a check here or have a combat there, but there's usually something missing, and that what's usually missing is consequences for different actions, consequences for failure, consequences for success. And if you can incorporate all of that into a specific encounter, then you're hitting those high points. That's the big thing I've seen being an editor and a developer of adventures over a vast number of years between third, fourth, and fifth edition. The rules may change, but that sort of adventure, the beats of an adventure don't change. The beats of a good story don't change. So check out all 10 blog articles, and you'll see all that.
No, that's a great resource for people that want to want advice on writing an adventure. And 10 articles, that's a hefty chunk. Now I see why I asked if it's going to get compiled into a book.
Yeah, I mean, a book is always something I've had on the back burner, because if each of these articles is 3,000 words and there's 10 of them, that's 30,000 words. That's a pretty good size thing right there. And that's just talking about adventure design. That doesn't touch on world building. That doesn't touch on incorporating the rules or DMs creating their own races, classes, or any of the crunchy stuff. So it's something that's on my mind, but I never turn down a job since I'm doing this full-time freelance stuff, have been for 2 years now. And so I grew up in a not very wealthy family where money was always an issue. And that has plagued me my entire life, because I'm always like, oh, I can make $100 if I do this. Right. And I don't even think that, wait, I'm working 100 hours on this. Yeah, I could be using my time in better ways. So it probably would make sense to put a book together based on stuff I've already written on various blogs. And it probably wouldn't take as much work as I think it would. And it would probably be much more monetarily beneficial to do that. But I'm more focused on, Wizards needs me to do this, so here I go, and start filling up that blank page.
Well, I mean, it's definitely easy to become over inundated like that. But maybe some of those projects where you have it written, maybe you can hand it off to someone else and bring someone else in on it, so you can keep doing the things you're doing and not break your momentum. And then the other things can get done as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's a great point about the industry as a whole, right? Is don't try to do everything yourself, because you're never going to be able to do as much as you could. And this is another hang up I have, right? I know my capabilities, so I know I can do this, and this. And a lot of times someone else could have done it just as well as I could have, but I just couldn't let it go. It's not necessarily even a trust issue as much as just a mindset that I'm trying to get myself out of. Now I
Yeah.
can't do art and I can't do layout, so I'm happy to pass off art and layout to anyone who can hold a pencil more steady than I can.
We our first Kickstarter was a compilation of articles on our website.
Mhm.
Because we were trying to figure out, like, we knew we wanted to do a Kickstarter. We're like, I don't know, what do we want to do? And then we're like, oh, we got this series on our website that's really cool, and I think it'd be really useful for people. It'd be nice to put that in a book, and give it proper maps and art, and obviously it's going to need some extra TLC with some editing and everything. And so that's what we actually did, and that did very well. So
Mhm.
there's no reason why you can't do the same thing. and
Right.
and in our case, like, also when we wrote that stuff, when we didn't read it, when our writer wrote that stuff, it wasn't meant for publication, so we weren't there were no rules that were followed, right? So
Right.
we had to go back through and figure out what was acceptable for the OGL and
Yeah.
SRD and all that stuff as well. So it's, we still needed a bit of work, but it wasn't the same as starting from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah, the blank page intrigues me because I always want to open it up and start new, and
Okay.
it's just a habit that I need to break. But there are so many great creators out there, so many talented artists and layout people and editors and proofreaders and art directors, and it's just a matter of finding them, taking the time to kind of vet them, right? Because you want to work with other people, but you also want to lift up the right people. You want to
Mm.
lift up the people who aren't horrible folks, and so it does take time to do that due diligence, and it's worth the time once it's done.
And there's some good points. So I think Dave's going to be a little sad this year because he needs something else for you to sign at Gamehole Con. Uh,
Oh yeah, Gamehole Con. Yeah, Gamehole Con was canceled.
there will be no conventions until 2021, I suspect.
Yeah. Now Gamehole Con is probably going to do an online thing, and that's going to be important. Well, Gamehole Con for the Adventurers League, especially for the Eberron campaign, that was where we launched Oracle of War. And so that was going to be the launching point for the next set of adventures. The tier 3 adventures were going to premiere there. So if they do an online version, that might be where the tier 3 Oracle of War Eberron adventures for the Adventurers League will premiere.
So does AL is there internal discussions about what you guys are doing now? Is that something you can talk about?
Well, there are discussions. There are always discussions with Adventurers League because the Adventurers League is made up of the administrators who are not Wizards of the Coast employees, but were contractors. So a lot is left up to us to do what we want to do, but Wizards definitely oversees it, right? It's official Wizards material. So we may come up with something, take it to Chris Lindsay, who is the overseer of the Adventurers League at Wizards, and he might say, well, this we can do, this we can't, and he may or may not be able to tell us why, but he has the final say on things. But we're Adventurers League and its predecessor, Living Forgotten Realms, and then the RPGA even before that, has always been an experiment. It's always been, how can we meet certain goals in the easiest way possible? And sometimes the experiments have failed horribly. A lot of times it's because I thought they were good ideas. And sometimes, it goes well, but you still need to make some changes for a variety of reasons. So the experiment continues. The whole Oracle of War campaign has been an experiment, right? The Adventurers League reaches the Forgotten Realms campaign of the Adventurers League reaches a certain audience. They're a great audience. They are wide, they are diverse, they are fanatic, which is great. But there's also an audience out there that plays D&D that wasn't served by that campaign. So we needed to make a new one to see if we could make a new campaign that reached out to different people, to more people, to new people, to old people, who knows. And so far it's worked pretty well. The once per month release cycle makes it so we can better control the flow, the leveling, and all that. So it's much more contained, but we can tell a more focused story because of that. And so far I think it's working well. And if we start a new campaign at some point, then it might be completely different. Who knows?
Now, you told me you're working on some things that you can't talk about right now.
Mhm.
Might folks figure out what those things are if they tune in to D&D Live this year?
You certainly can. You certainly can. So D&D Live, let me grab my calendar here. D&D Live is the June 18th through June 21st. And if you go to the Wizards of the Coast website, it is top of mind and top of site, where you can sign up to watch live stream shows. You can sign up. I don't know if it's live yet, but it will be live at some point to play in online games. You will be able to hear what the next product from Wizards of the Coast will be. And so I'm looking forward to that. I have signed up to DM. So if you come sign up to play in one of the games, there are a team of great DMs waiting to give you your gaming fix.
So I have a question that you may or may not be able to answer, which is either is fine. Um, if people sign up and get into your games, will you be running stuff that you can't talk about right now?
Yes,
Okay, cool.
absolutely. Yep. Yep.
So I know because I know Dave earlier was kind of fishing for some leaks. I don't think you're gonna get any here, but
Oh no,
yeah,
no.
if you
That would be the end of my gaming career.
yeah,
So
don't fall on your sword for us.
yeah. I love you all, but not that much.
But if you tune in to D&D Live, you'll be able to see what Sean has been working on, and possibly even play some of the stuff that he's been working on run by him, which would be super cool.
Mhm.
So over your career, like, can you pick a favorite child?
Mm. No, no. I mean, it's I only have one real child, so she's my favorite, and
That
I
makes it
can't.
easy.
Yeah, it makes it easy. It's you have a love-hate relationship with everything that you work on, or at least I do, right? I'll start it and I'll hate it and I'll hate it, and then I'll get to a point in the writing where I'm like, okay, this is pretty good, and then after you reach that peak, then it's the revision, and it's like the 30th time you've read through it and you just hate it again, and then it's out the door and you forgot about it, and then people start playing it, sometimes immediately or sometimes a year later, and then you sort of like it again, and you say, oh, that wasn't that bad, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and then if you read it, or if you say run it, like run a big campaign of it, then you get to hate it again, because it brings back all those memories of you going through that 17th draft and tweaking it, or having to go back and rewrite a certain section. And so it's a very emotional process, actually, and it's a love-hate relationship with sort of every product that you write, everything that you work on.
Like, I've heard like that from a lot of different authors when they're asked about their work, because as you just mentioned, like all the revisions, things that have to be changed. By the time you get done and you have the final product, a lot of times the authors don't know what they really wrote, like that got published, right? Because they're like, which version?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, when you turn in, it depends on the publisher. When you turn in something to Wizards of the Coast, say, if on a big product, if you turn in your first draft, if it needs to be revised, which it usually does, you'll get some notes back and then asked to revise. But at the point where you send it and it goes to the editor, usually you don't see it again. And it may be that the editor makes a few changes. The editor might make a lot of changes. The editor might say, this is not good, and someone else at Wizards may rewrite it. It'll still have your name on it. So you'll get it back and you'll be like, oh, this is the part that I wrote and I don't know any of these words. So it's really bizarre. With Kobold Press, the editor for Kobold Press is Meghan Markle, and she has a much more hands-on approach. And it's not that any of the Wizards of the Coast editors are bad or do things wrong. It's just a different process. So with Megan, she sends you back your Word document with comments and with all the changes that she made and wants you to approve them. And that's cool too, because that teaches you the Kobold Press way of doing things and what they're looking for, not just in general, but for each project. So like I worked on the Underworld Player's Guide, which came out from their Empire of the Ghouls Kickstarter. So that's a bunch of races and subclasses, spells, and so on. And so that's a much different thing, because when you send that off, then it goes to playtesting. Well, when you get notes back from a playtest group, especially on something as crunchy as subclasses and races, you are now into different territory. So, they thought that this power was too weak. They thought that this power was too strong. They didn't understand this power. Could you rewrite it? So that's a whole different way of working than when you're writing an adventure. And sometimes 95% of the time I agreed with the playtest group. Yeah, I definitely need to change that. Compared to this other thing in this other book, it's way too powerful or way too weak. And then sometimes I'm like, you know what? You didn't like it, playtest group? Well, I like it. So we're going to keep it. Or at least I'm going to keep it, and then Megan might change it. But Megan is completely awesome to work with. So it's a great experience. It's a great experience to just do it whatever way it's done. Because if you just pass it off and it's done, then you get to work on other things. If you get the feedback, you're learning, you're refining, you're making better. But it takes the time to do that. So, I'm happy to work with so many editors I've worked with, Megan, with Hannah Rose, with Scott Fitzgerald Gray, with Bob Everson, with just a whole bunch of people. I'm sure I'm forgetting so many that are great. Ashley Navigator, just, wonderful people. And then as an editor myself, I learn from them, right? I learn how to best give feedback. If it's something that's kind of hard to say because this really wasn't that good, you learn from other editors how to say that and get the most out of the writer without turning them off.
Did you have a writing career before gaming?
Ish. So I wanted to be a D&D writer since I was like 10, right? That was what I wanted when I was growing up. And my education was, I was going to be a teacher, history and English, and I was going to teach, but that didn't work out. Although I have taught at colleges, sort of as an adjunct. I just went into software like every good, person my age ended up going into, it seems like. But I always loved writing. So I got an MFA in creative writing, and just the way my life lined up, as soon as that MFA in creative writing was done, 3rd edition D&D came out. And I was like, and my daughter was born at almost the exact same time. Those 3 things happened within like a month of each other. And so I was like, well, I'm going to get back into D&D because we're going to be home a lot more. I'll reach out and see if there's anybody in the area. And that's how I got involved with the RPGA, the Organized Play Organization from TSR/Wizards of the Coast. And so I started playing in that, and I saw adventures were coming out that just really weren't that good. And I had an MFA in creative writing. I taught writing. So I was like, hey, can I help in any way? Can I edit? Can I review things for you? Do you want me to do any writing? Is there anything I can do? And I was told, basically take a hike. Now, this was a volunteer organization,
Mm.
right? So I couldn't even volunteer my time to do this. And so then, other things happened, and I'd say, "Hey, can I help out?" And they're like, "No." And then another thing happened, and I'd be like, "Hey, can I help?" So it took me a full year of begging to volunteer, um, with an MFA and a master's in English, to volunteer to work. And then, a few years passed as a volunteer, and I then worked my way up till I was doing a few volunteer projects for Wizards directly. So it was this. So I had the education, and I had done a lot of writing. I was a technical writer. I'd written academically, but I hadn't like published fiction per se until I got in through RPGs.
That's funny because your story kind of parallels our editor layout and kind of content manager on our websites, because he emailed us several times asking if he could volunteer some articles, and we were just like, because there's like a couple of us and we do everything,
Right.
like we'd be like, we'd get something and you'd like all right, I'll get to that later, and we'd never get to it. So he kept emailing us till we finally let him work for us as a volunteer.
Yeah.
And then he volunteered for us for several years till we got to the point where we had a successful Kickstarter. We're like, oh, you know what? I think I can pay you a salary for at least a year.
Yeah.
Do you want that? I mean, I know you have a job, a decent job that you're doing now. Because we had talked to him and he wanted to work. He's wanted to work with us. I'm like, I can offer you a year. After that, who knows what happens? But I want you to understand that after a year, this could go away.
Right.
And he's like, nope, I'm going to do it. And we've been working with Doug since September. So sometimes it's just like a matter of being persistent.
I mean that perseverance is so important, because that's life, right? You're going to get told no a lot, but you do it anyway. And you're going to, if you're writing something, if you're designing a game, you're going to hear no, not just from like people in the industry, but from fans and from yourself, right? You're going to have to learn to work past those hurdles. But the important thing is doing it without being obnoxious about it, right? The important thing is, not to be told no twice and then go on Twitter and say what a jerk so-and-so is, because, right, it's just part of life. It's part of life to work past rejection and work past those hurdles. And you're just a stronger person. You're a stronger creator the more that you do that.
And speaking to that is like, you only know one side of it. You don't know everything that's involved, why you're getting a no.
Right.
It could be completely you, but it may have nothing to do with you. It just might be timing or whatever. So you're right. Like, you being patient and just waiting, but being persistent and doing it in a tactful way, is sometimes the way to go. I do have another question for you about D&D Live and running games there. Those games will they be public or private games?
I'm 99% sure it's going to be private.
Good. That's a good call.
Yeah. I mean, there will be public games.
Yeah.
But those are the games that Wizards of the Coast produces themselves. This is just, hey, you want to play a game in this new whatever they're announcing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Come on down.
Okay.
And we've got games for you.
There's a very specific reason I asked. One is, one of the people in the chat said, I'm really nervous about signing up. I'm not that great a player. And you know what? Fold that noise. Everyone is a good enough player to play in a game with other gamers and just play D&D or whatever role-playing game you're going to play. There's no qualifiers here. If you show up at the table, you are good enough. And if you don't, as long as you don't detract from the game and other people's fun, you belong at the table.
Exactly. Even if you don't say 3 words and, get up, as long as you don't actively mock or inhibit the game in some way, come and enjoy. I'm not that great a DM, but I'm there anyway. So, let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't consider myself a great GM. I just like playing this game. And if people keep returning to my table, I will keep running stuff for them. So I just assume they're getting something out of it.
Right. Yeah. It's we all play differently, but we all play together. And, some of the people that sign up for this will be brand new and they won't even know what D&D is. And they'll be there to play because they've heard about it. And then some people there will be, people who play daily and are really big in the Adventures League. And that's okay too. There's going to be a variety of DMs and we'll have fun. The DMs, I know the DMs are really good. They were recruited specifically for this, so they're top-notch DMs and they know how to help people have a good time.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing time. And like, I just want to say, like, there is enough gatekeepers out there in the world for every and any hobby. You don't need to gatekeep yourself.
True story. True story.
So, how do you? Zareth wants to know, how do I sign up? I'm pretty sure you probably just go to the Wizards of the Coast website, right?
Yeah, it's if you go to the Wizards of the Coast website, there's links. It'll give you all the announcements. Then there's a link that says like sign up, or if you click that, you sign in. I think there's a $10. They want people who are going to play and partake to contribute to the charity that they're supporting, which is the Red Nose Day. And if you do that, then you have access to all the things. There are more details will be coming out about all of this. Some I don't know, some I do, but really it's not my place to talk about it. So just go there, sign up to get the information, and you will see everything as it unfolds.
Yeah, the PR company usually sends us the press releases, and I'm sure once they send us something, we'll throw something up on the website to get help get the information out there. So if you stay tuned to our socials, Wizards of the Coast socials, the D&D community online as a whole, I'm sure you're just going to see that stuff come up.
You will be inundated if you were online, and on my Twitter, I will also post information as it comes up.
So let's talk about the podcast a little bit. We've danced around it a little bit.
Yeah.
Down with D&D. What's that all about? Sounds like maybe being down with D&D.
It is. If you're down with D&D, you're welcome on the show. Down as in get down with it. Yeah. So the Misdirected Mark Network is a large network of different podcasts, and Misdirected Mark being the mothership of them. Misdirected Mark just talks about games in general, so it's not just D&D; it's all sorts of games. And they decided to make a D&D type show, and I was on it a few times, and finally I was asked if I would come on to be a co-host. And the show has evolved over the years. It's probably been on for 3 years now, and I've probably been on it for 2 of those years. But I love to talk about D&D. I love to think about D&D. So this show is basically, at this point, just let me grab somebody who I think is an interesting person in the D&D world. Let's hear from them for about 20 minutes on how they got into the industry, how they got into gaming, what they love about gaming, and then another 20 minutes on a specific topic that I think will be interesting to people. So we'll talk about running games online with one of the streamers, like Celeste Konowich came on to talk about running games online. Greg Marks from the Adventures League, who has probably DM'd more than any person I've ever known because he goes to conventions and runs game after game after game. I had him coming on to talk about sort of DM game mastery, right? What are things that the best DMs do? As many people as I could think of once a week come on and talk about a topic. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/MMP. If you give to that, you get show notes, you get some extras from 3 of the shows, and we just appreciate the help. And then you can talk to us on our forums about what maybe somebody you want me to see if I can interview. And that's what I do. So I just keep an eye on the pulse of D&D and chat about it when I can.
Is that monthly, weekly?
It's a weekly show. It usually drops on Thursdays each week, about 45 minutes total, because we don't want to go too long to take up too much time. But we try to get to the heart of whatever matter that we're talking about.
45 minutes is decent. Like,
yeah,
I'll look and see like some of my colleagues on on YouTube will post, like, they'll do live streams, and I think Luke Hart, I've seen where he's doing like 2 to 4 hours by himself, just
Yeah.
live stream talking to people. I'm like, I don't know that I have that much to say at one time. Kudos to you, buddy, but I'm like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. If you become a patron of the show, every week I do like a 10 or 15 minute deep dive into something D&D related. So like for the last 4 or 5 weeks, I looked at the Unearthed Arcana Psionics article. And like each week I would break down one of the subclasses and say, okay, this is what it does. Here's a design thing to think about. This is maybe why it's not great, but it's okay. You know, that sort of thing, kind of give my opinion on these things. That's for patrons of the show. You know, just a quick little, let's talk D&D in depth. And then the regular show is 45 minutes of chatting with someone.
So that, 2 years of podcasting, tons of writing. How do you have time to fit this all in? Adventure League admin.
It's my life now.
Yeah.
It's my life now. So I've worked for the same software company for 20 years. At the end of 2018, the company was sold, and I had to make a choice if I was going to try to stay with the new company, if I was going to go off and search for a new job, or if I was going to make this a full-time thing. And luckily my wife is very supportive, has a good job. So I had and even most importantly, D&D 5e is exploding, right? There is an audience for it like never before. So I, sat down with a spreadsheet, did some math, thinking, okay, can I make a living doing this? That was at the end of 2018. It's now at the beginning of 2020. It turns out you can. It turns out it's a lot of work because as Dave mentioned before we started recording, how do you make $1 million in game design? You start with 2 million.
Okay.
It's not lucrative by any stretch, but it's doable, and it's something that I love doing. So I look forward most days to coming in and doing what I'm doing. It's not, oh, I have to go to work again. It's, oh boy, I have 4 projects. Which one do I get to work on today? So that's something. And to be honest, it's just in my mental makeup. I went through horrible bouts of insomnia at one point. Nothing fixed it. Not medication, not reading, not watching TV, not playing games, but writing did. That's when I decided to go get my MFA in creative writing, because I'm thinking, if I'm going to be writing to sleep, I might as well get something out of it. So let me get an MFA. So I learned how to write stories, and I learned everything there was about narrative flow and structure and whatever else that came with that. And that put me on the track to make writing a habit rather than something I would do if I got lucky. And so that's why I can work on 4 different projects and put out a lot of content and be happy with it, because I get to sleep at night if I do.
That's an awesome benefit. And now, now you can put yourself to sleep by making that cha-ching.
And many readers put to sleep as well, I hear. But sorry, I had to get that one in there.
Yeah, if you can't sing yourself, who can you sing?
That's right.
Yeah. That's an awesome story. You just mentioned those, like, MFA. Is that what you said?
Yeah, a Master of Fine Arts.
Okay.
It's sort of the terminal degree in an art field. So it's like a PhD in most fields.
Mm-hmm.
In art, there are Doctor of Fine Arts, but for the most part, an MFA, a Master of Fine Arts, is a terminal degree in a creative field. So, do
you track how many hours you work a week?
Roughly, yes. I don't have it. So I have lots of spreadsheets with different things. That's not one thing, but it's definitely more than 40. Let's put it that way.
I imagine it is.
I will generally work a normal work day, Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I'm normally up at a regular time working in the morning, and then we'll see in the afternoon what, usually there's family things going on or housework that needs to be done, family time. But yeah, the strange thing was, when I was doing freelancing and had a full-time job, I would usually work from about 7 to 3 on my regular job, and then 3 to 5 or 6, get dinner, and then work more at night. And I thought, imagine how much more I'm going to be able to get done if I don't have that 9 to 5 job too. And strangely enough, I'm not getting much more done. I think I've hit my threshold.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when I'm working, it's more answering email, posting on social media about something, podcasts, getting podcast notes ready, things like that, as opposed to straight up writing. But it keeps my mind in that realm, so it helps when I then switch to writing. I've got ideas fresh in my head.
Well, you're a freelancer, and being a freelancer, anyone that's self-employed knows it's like you then end up with all these tasks that aren't really involved in doing the thing that you do.
Right.
So I'm sure that's what happens is they begin filling up that space. There are things that maybe as when you're like transitioning, you're not paying as much attention to that stuff as you should be,
Right.
because you're doing your day job, and then you're
Yep.
doing the other stuff, and then it's like, crunch time comes, and like, oh, I got to do all this other stuff so the government doesn't put me in jail.
Right, exactly. It's like,
the normal
wait,
stuff.
I can put expenses on my taxes. I should probably start keeping track of those,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So, there's always an hour or so a week where I'm like, okay, what did I spend? I bought new ink. Okay, I bought this software that I need. All right, make sure I put that down. So when I'm doing taxes at the end of the year, I can, it's a business expense. So let's get this right.
Oh, absolutely. So we're up on that time. Any final words as we head on out?
Well, thank you all for coming on and listen. Dave, thank you for hosting me. I appreciate it. It's always great to talk to you, even if we can't talk at a convention now.
Yeah, I know. Usually at the conventions, I run into you and get a chance to chat a little bit, and I believe we've had you on at least one other time back when we were doing these before. So it's great to have you back, and hopefully we can do this again soon, or talk in person at the next convention once they finally open up. And
I'm counting the days.
it's just a matter of time.
Yep.
So until next time, everyone, stay nerdy.